Hi, everyone. It is Friday, and this is the Parent Exchange. And I'm Tilly Elvrum, your host here at Parent Support for Online Learning. And today we are going to talk about a subject that either really excites people or scares them to death, and that is math education, and in particular, math in the online setting. And with so many of you doing remote learning, through your school districts, you are all struggling with kind of the end of the semester challenges that happen after being home for many, many months, or you are just now returning back to remote learning because of the rise in COVID cases across the country. So I've been hearing your frustrations, and some of you are really struggling right now with student motivation and helping your students with their math homework. And last night I posted a funny little clip in the group about, what it's like to help your students with math. And it can be really challenging sometimes. So I wanted to reach out to someone that has a lot of experience educating students in the online setting, and a math educator at that. And so I'm glad to have Barry Squire with us today. And full disclosure, Barry was a teacher for my son many years ago, and helped him with his online learning. And we're very grateful to Barry. And Barry has a lot of experience educating students in different online schools using different platforms and technology, which I think is really wonderful. And I can't think of a better person to be here today to talk to you all and share some insights and guidance. But first, we will let Barry introduce himself. And I think what I love, and I didn't know until I asked for your bio, was that you came to teaching a little bit later in life and started off in the business sector before. So tell us a little bit about your journey to get to today as an online educator.
Oh gosh, thank you for the kind words, first of all. But yeah, I started my working career in the corporate business world. I graduated from college in the mid 80s. So it was a time when materialism was really, really big. And we know what teachers get paid. So I wasn't interested in teaching, although with a math degree, there isn't really a lot of options. But I was fascinated by math, and so I used math wherever I could. But I did play in the in management, in corporate America, in a family business, as well as some other larger companies in the corporate world, focusing on marketing and then a lot of data crunching. So, and turns out that after about 20 years, and we had that recession in 2008, my position got eliminated. My position was with Black & Decker. I was product development manager for their blender line of products. And my position got eliminated. So they kind of said to me, what do you think you're going to do now? Like, without hesitation, I'm like, I'm going to teach high school math. That was what I've always wanted to do. Loved the idea of being at the front of the classroom on the chalkboard and having chalk dust on my hands all the time. Thought it was awesome. So after 20 years, I'm like, okay, this is a time where I can redefine myself, and I'm going to follow my passion. My passion was math. So, and as I was learning to be a teacher, I was learning more ways of understanding math and taking it apart so that I could explain it to people. And I'm still learning new ways to explain it. But that was in 2008. I started teaching. My first place teaching was on online school at Colorado Connections Academy. And I started by teaching 6th and 7th grade math, which I didn't think I was going to like. To be quite honest, I'm afraid of little kids, to be honest. But I found out that these kids are sponges. They want to learn, they want to please. And if you can make it exciting for them, even by tone of voice, it's going to be exciting for them. So that's one of the things that I focus on, is just making sure that my tone of voice is energetic. And I just try and keep that alive for them so that they're constantly asking why. Even if it's, why is this person so weird? They're asking why. And that's what I'm really, really striving for. So I've been doing this on teaching online for 10 years, like you said, at various different schools. I have done a classroom, not my cup of tea. I'm not a disciplinarian. And face-to-face teaching requires a lot of discipline. And that's just not why I got into teaching. I got into teaching for education. So I can do more of that in an online environment.
I love that, because I think we talk a lot about school choice and through the lens of parents and students and how they need options. But teachers, educators need choice. Wouldn't it be great if every teacher could teach in the setting that fit them best, their style, their needs? And you found that through the online setting, which I think is wonderful. And we do hear a lot from educators that, you know, they spend a lot of time doing things other than teaching. And this has allowed you to really, you know, focus on your passion, which is communicating math and teaching and sharing your knowledge with kids, and not so much, you know, lunchroom duty or classroom management. So,
Exactly.
but you do have unique skill sets for online education. You were talking about it, you know, your delivery is really important in the online model. And talk a little bit before we kind of dive into the math conversation, just because I have you here, talk a little bit about the professional development that you've had over the years to become an effective online teacher.
Oh gosh, lots of professional development. Some of it doesn't even feel like professional development, because it's just like, I'm not looking to necessarily get that piece of paper that says I did so many hours of professional development. I'm really looking to, I want to make this more enjoyable for myself. And if it's more enjoyable for me, it's going to be more enjoyable for my kids. So that's what I really, really focus on, is the learning how to create exciting activities or foster exciting conversations and getting kids to talk about anything. But if they're talking about math, that's even better.
Right.
So I just try and, you know, my favorite question to ask is, how do you know? And why do you think that? Just keep the conversation going and let the kids chime in. I don't do a lot with hand raising or taking turns, since I don't allow a lot of microphones, because I have a large number of students in my class at a time, close to 90 sometimes. And so the bandwidth can be a little bit of an obstacle, but if I get them chatting, even if it's through their fingers, then I'm happy.
Yeah.
So it's just get them involved. So
well, I think you know, you're speaking to the tricks of the trade that you've learned over the years on classroom management in the online setting, and kind of the tools that you have at your disposal. And I think that's been one of the hard parts for our traditional systems trying to adapt to the online environment. They try to make it look like in-person learning, and it doesn't really have to be effective. And sometimes it's better, because you can kind of have that communication with students without all the distractions, without all the chatter, and focus on what you really need to get done with these kids, instead of, you know, just all this outside chaos going on. I know for us, we really appreciated that in the online setting. Kids are kids. And if you have a student who's kind of going to be a stinker in person, they'll probably figure out a way to be a stinker online.
Oh, yeah.
But you have tools at your disposal where you can hit mute, or, you know, take them out of the class, and, you know, whatever it is, you have ways to deal with those issues. and a lot of it happens on the back end and nobody else has to know. So
Exactly.
it's not disrupting, the flow of what you're trying to do or what, a student is working on at the time, which I just appreciated so much as a parent in the online setting, that we didn't have those issues. And it really was the core of our day when we were in, a live lesson getting synchronous instruction. It was about the learning. It wasn't about all the other things that can happen in a classroom. And,
Exactly.
for my student, that was important, and especially during math class. We needed every single brain cell and attention, everything had to be focused on that task. And I know a lot of kids are like that. So
Indeed.
talk a little bit about, how has COVID affected what you're doing, your teaching, your school, your students? Have you seen an impact?
The impact that I've seen has really been enrollment growth. I started with a new school this year, but from meetings I've attended, the enrollment this year has more than doubled than what it was at the end of last year.
Yeah.
So a lot of families, it seems, were saying, I don't know what next year, when they were looking at enrollment options for the fall, I don't know what school's going to look like. I don't know that I really liked the way my local school district or the school that my kid was in the spring, I don't really like the way they handled it. So, and since I don't know what things are going to be like in the fall, I'm going to look for somebody that knows what they're doing. And Pearson and Connections Academy have been doing it for almost 20 years. So they've got all the kinks, most of the kinks worked out. Processes are already in place. So really, in terms of how did it affect teaching, we just had to triple our staff.
Yeah. And I'm sure, even these established online schools, I'm sure they had growing pains because of the growth that they went through, that nobody could forecast. It's one thing if you could say, we're going to grow by 5% because that's kind of the natural course of things. But to see the world shut down and schools shut down, and nobody could have planned for that. So
absolutely not.
And so we try to be gracious all the way around to our friends in the traditional system and then our full-time online schools, because nobody could have predicted it. But I think the key is, like you said, they've been doing it a long time. And so the basics, the foundations of online learning, none of that changed for you guys. And you were able to deliver some continuity for families that was much needed. So let's kind of dive into just the heart of the matter. Math is hard for a lot of people.
It is.
What are some resources that parents can tap into to help them? Because I think that's sometimes the biggest problem is parents don't know. And it's hard to teach something when you are not comfortable with it and you don't feel like it's your strength. And I think you talked about, before we started this, we were talking about attitude, and I say that quite often to families in this group. Attitude is everything.
Absolutely.
And if you start the day, with dread and anxiety about online learning, your kids are going to pick it up.
Kids feed off of that.
Totally.
Without even verbal cues.
Yeah. So talk about the things that parents can do to set their kids up for a better experience with math.
Some of my advice would be, even if you had a bad experience with math, try not to let your kids know that. You can be truthful with them and say, I was not a good math student, but here's why I think I was not a good math student, and I bet that you can overcome this. And give them the confidence that you probably needed when you were a student, so that they can believe that they can do it. And students learn at different rates. So they can't compare themselves to other students. Yeah, we do make comparisons on, on what's normal, but that's all that is. It's just normal, but who's normal?
Right.
Um, so yeah, don't let the kids see your don't let the kids see you sweat. Um, if you have to hide it, then hide it the best you can and rely on the teacher.
Yeah.
The teachers don't expect you to be a content expert on every single subject.
Yeah.
Um,
As a teacher, I mean, how do you feel when parents reach out? I mean, is that just an added thing on your plate, or does it help you as a teacher to have that line of
it
communication?
actually helps me a lot. One of the things that I've found from even though my short stint in face-to-face classroom is that I feel like I know my online students, or the online students that I know really, really well.
Yeah.
But I hardly knew my face-to-face students at all. Didn't know what was going on in their families, so we have really good relationships with my students. So when I hear from a parent that my student is having trouble with, recently it's been adding fractions with unlike denominators. That's what the lesson's been this week, and I'm like, okay, I don't expect you to answer it. I have lots of different ways we can take we can unpack this unit. So let's look at fractions this way. Use me. Use your teachers. We don't expect you to know it all. We don't expect you to be teachers. If we're a real, true online school, then the teachers are teachers, and yeah, we need the parent support and we need your positive attitudes and all that. But we don't, like I said, we don't expect you to be content experts. That's what we're here for. We're certified. The state says we can do it, so we can do it. So when I get that information, I'm like, yes, let me talk to the kid. Let me talk to the kid and see how they're making connections and where I can bring those other connections from other things we've learned and from other content areas as well.
Yeah, I think that was one of the biggest benefits for us to have a full-time online school. And when we decided to do this, we actually lived in a community that had a really big homeschool community, and a lot of people, when we decided the traditional setting wasn't going to work for us, they tried to, Tilly, you could do homeschooling, and it scared me to death because math was the biggest thing. Like, I just knew that was not my strength, and the idea of that responsibility was a no-go for me. And I really needed the support of an expert, a content certified math instructor. It just there that was a given. But what I loved was that we worked in partnership.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had, if he was struggling, I could call, a Mr. Squire and say, listen, today's lesson did not happen. And you guys would offer, okay, let's do a one-on-one session.
Sure.
Let's get them in a session, just you and the student, and let's work through it. And that really helped. And I would encourage parents to, like you said, keep that line of communication open, because you can't help if you don't know.
Exactly. If I don't know that your student's struggling, then I can't help.
Yeah.
And you might think, well, yeah, you see his grades, you can see that his grades are bad. But there's a lot of reasons grades can be bad. It's not just because he doesn't understand. So there's a lot of stuff that contributes to the grade, if you will. So we'd like to get deeper into what's going on. So it does mean talking to the kid and talking to the family. And I'm even going to say, even if like my mother was not a math person, okay? And she used to tell me that she failed Mickey Mouse math in college. And here I am, I'm, have an MBA and master's in math and math teacher and all that nice stuff. And but she would always say, hey, if you don't understand it, let's contact the teacher. Let's learn it together. So use your weakness as a strength is another way to use that, so that you can still say, yeah, I really was bad at math, but look, I can still learn it again. If I can learn it, you can learn it.
Yeah, and that was really kind of my experience with my son JD. And I've always said, when you educate a student online, you're really educating a family, because parents are so integral to that experience. And I learned so much sitting next to him, watching math tutorials, going through his live lessons, things that I missed. And, and I always thought I had a great public education, but I was the kind of I had to work really hard. It was not a natural gift where, you probably sit down and just look at a problem and you're like, of course, that's how you do it. No, I really had to work really hard. And it actually wasn't until I was in college. I don't know why. I don't know if it was like maturity, or I don't know, something magical happened with my brain, or I just had a really great instructor. But it was the first time as a freshman in college that I was in a math class, and I'm like, oh, like every light bulb started going off, and I'm like,
you just gave me chills.
Yeah, and again, it came back to that confidence level, because then I felt like, I had this confidence in the work that I was about to do. And I think that's what we want for all of our kids. And wouldn't it be great if they could get it before they got to college?
Exactly.
Because then it's going to open doorways for them. What are some, I don't know, resources that you think are helpful for those occasions? Because we do have lots of parents in this group that they don't have access to a teacher, unfortunately. Their kids are strictly online. There are kids in this group that haven't had any live instruction since last March.
Wow.
What are some resources that teachers could tap, or parents could tap into to support them helping their kids?
I've seen you mention on the Facebook group, IXL is definitely an excellent resource. I know it's not free.
Yeah.
But you can do a certain amount of stuff on a free basis. But I know that the resources that are available through IXL are astounding.
Yeah.
Another one that I use a lot is actually Khan Academy. I actually, even some of my students that have some gaps, even though they're taking 6th grade math, but they're still struggling with what's the idea of a fraction. But they understand that I can only combine fractions when they're the same size. So I will refer them to Khan Academy, and I just set up a class so I can monitor what's going on in Khan Academy. But it's pretty much proscriptive. So they'll start off the program with basically a general ability assessment, just to see what level they're at, and then take that data and put together a pathway to fill in some gaps before they start building higher and higher onto those concepts. So that's one of the things that I like about, I think IXL does it as well, but Khan Academy does a good job of it. I love puzzles. So most of the time what I do for enrichment is I give my students puzzles, and I find them just on Facebook. I find them on the internet, just those ones that are like all the fruit, this plus the, 4 bananas and 4 bananas equals 8. How much is a banana? Then you see like 3 bananas plus 3 bananas. And that's, what is that going to be equal to? So that is all the idea. That's algebra. Yeah. I mean, that is formal algebra in a very informal kind of way. I teach algebra as bags of candy. We just don't know how many pieces of candy are in each bag. But so I just try and make it relatable. If you can make it relatable, I will ask the kids, what's your favorite candy? And then I'll use variables based on their favorite candy. And
It's
I
much
just,
more fun than X and Y, right?
oh yeah, because I get bored with X and Y, you know?
Yeah.
So I would do a lot of K and J, Kit Kats and Jolly Ranchers. Um,
Nice.
but there are resources out there for games. Mathplayground.com
Okay.
is a good one. Um, Another one, if you're looking for some
I'm
serious,
writing these down.
okay, some serious math instruction, might be mathisfun.com
Okay.
and purplemath.com is another good one.
Nice.
And that's a little bit drier and a little bit more schooly.
Hmm.
But if that's what you're looking for, rather than something that's a little bit more, has more gamification in it, then those are excellent resources. There's so many out there. Some of the puzzles I like to do, actually, I didn't know I was going to do this, but I don't know if I can hold it up here. There we go. I give them a riddle, and then they have to do a bunch of math problems to figure out the answer to the riddle.
Nice.
So that came from marcymathworks.com. And yes, I had to buy them, but I use them all the time.
Well, and I think that's, a lot of, even IXL is, there's a cost associated with it,
Mm-hmm.
but you get a lot of bang for your
You
buck.
do, absolutely.
And if your kid is really struggling, it's a worthy investment.
Absolutely.
And IXL is great because they you can do it by month.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe, your kid's only struggling with a certain concept or something. You don't have to do a big long-term thing.
Right. They don't have to buy a whole course.
Yeah. But of course, if you do it, by the yearly plan, the price comes down a little bit per month.
Mm-hmm.
But, those are, important things. But I will, after when I post this video, I'll share all those resources, the links, because there's new ones there for me as well. And the great thing is like what might be dry or boring to you or me, somebody
Mm-hmm.
else might think is great. And because we're all so different and we all kind of have those learning sweet spots that,
Yep.
some are visual, some are auditory, some needs hands-on. And it's different for all of us. So
It is.
I would rather parents have a bunch of different things to check out and figure out and play with than just saying, well, I didn't like it. You be the judge.
Right. Different styles for different folks. Coolmath.com is another one.
Okay.
It makes me think about some multiplication games. Yes, multiplication.com is another good one.
Okay.
So
they just there's so many
there,
out there.
There are almost too many.
Well, and I think that's parents at the beginning of this were so overwhelmed because a lot of them were trying to kind of piece together things because the remote learning wasn't as
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, strong
Robust.
at the beginning, robust. And so they were trying to figure all this out and there was so much and then they just got overwhelmed. And we all know what happens when you get overwhelmed. You just kind of shut down.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, we all have. And it's been a really challenging time for all of us. So, I just want to encourage parents that we've all been there. And even those of us that chose online learning and did it for a very long time, there were bad days. There were days where math was not happening because he was in tears and I was pretty close to tears. And we just kind of had to take a break and regroup and
But online, you can do that.
Yeah. And talk a little bit about that. Like, what do you do when your kid is kind of hitting the wall or shutting down and you just know, like the eyes are glazing over? What do you recommend?
Go for it. Take a nap. Go for a walk.
Yeah.
That's what I do when I get frustrated. I take a nap, and I kind of call it a brain reset. I just wake up with a different attitude. But I will tell parents that it's math. It's just math. It's really not worth crying about. I understand that kids want to do their best. They want to make your parents proud. They want to make their teachers proud. And they feel like if they don't do their best, they're letting everybody down. That's not the case. You're letting us down if you don't try. So if you're trying, that's what matters. If you don't get it, that's okay, because we don't always get it the first time.
Yeah.
And that's something I still have to tell myself.
Well, and I think we put a lot of, I don't know, this expectation of like, you know, being successful is just getting it right on the first try. And we don't instill in our kids enough of that idea about being persistent, and it's okay to fail, and you will fail, and here are the ways to cope and to get through it.
That's one of the things that I talk about a lot is, you know, what do you do when you make a mistake? How do you handle it when you make a mistake? What have you learned from that mistake? How are you going to handle it when you come across this situation again and you know that you made a mistake last time? Are you going to freeze, or are you going to say, no, I can do this? Yeah. So I tell my students, I expect mistakes. I want to see the mistakes. I like mistakes. The mistakes tell me that you're learning. If you can do it perfectly the first time, you don't need me. And what am I doing? So if you get it the first time, that's great. Let's go find some mistakes to make. Let's go make some mistakes together. It's one of the reasons I like to ask my kids all the time, how do you know this? And why? Those are my favorite big questions, again, to start that discussion. Well, because 3 times 8 is 24. Well, how do you know? How do you know 3 times 8 is 24? Well, if I take 8 groups of 3 things, then I have 24 things. Well, but how do you know that you have 24? Well, if I rearrange them this way and this way, then I also have 4 groups of 6. You know, that's when we start seeing that we can break numbers into smaller pieces in lots of different ways. And that's part of math literacy, is being able to take things apart and put them back together in different ways.
Nice. I love that. And I think, you know, parents, we would save ourselves a lot of stress and our kids a little bit of stress if we communicated that way to them. And I think what you're talking about is really a culture of learning, which I hope, you know, this has been a challenging time, but there's some silver linings through this. And as parents, we're getting an opportunity to get a look into our kids' education a little more deeply than maybe we were afforded before. And we have an opportunity to talk about, like, you know, what was school like for us? What was challenging for us? How did we overcome it? And really share those things with our kids so that they can become lifelong learners and find joy in the experience of learning. And part of that is not getting it the first time and struggling and getting through the struggle.
Discovering patterns.
Yeah.
Because there is a certain amount of discovery to it, as opposed to just rote procedure. When I was in school, I learned procedures.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I started learning to teach that I started making a lot more connections in deeper understanding, and how everything is connected in some way. Actually, I was doing a lesson on primary numbers, and I was just talked about the word primary, just to begin with, because I find a lot of misunderstandings in math just come from vocabulary. If you don't know the terms, the mathematical words, you're not going to understand the mathematical questions. So we're talking about prime factorization. We have to understand what that number prime means. So I talk about primary, and then somebody started talking about primary colors. And I kind of went, oh my gosh, I never thought about that. Primary colors, that's exactly right. Primary colors are the building blocks for all the other colors. Well, prime numbers are the building blocks for all the other numbers. And she went, oh my God.
Making the connections.
Exactly. And it was her connection.
Moments. And yeah, it came from the student, which is wonderful. That's, I think as an educator, that's probably, I don't know, the best things for you. But to get to see that. But I loved that as a parent when I could see those kinds of things happen, instead of, how was your day at school? And, you'd get fine.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you learn today? Nothing, because we were learning online, I got to see those interactions between,
You could ask a little bit more pointed questions.
yeah,
Well, how did you feel when your teacher said
yeah,
this?
and I got to be a part of those light bulb moments, because there wasn't, we blurred the lines between home and school and parent and teacher, and we really were kind of in this team atmosphere,
Mm-hmm.
which I loved. And I hope there are parents out there that, even though this is hard, that are getting to experience some of the things that you're talking about. Yeah, because they're wonderful. I mean, that's why we ended up doing online for 10 years, and why you are an educator that continues to seek out, this model of education. Motivation is really difficult.
It is.
What tools do you use as an educator to motivate your students?
That's a big one, and I don't know that I have the answer. I don't even know that I have a answer or an answer. But one of the things that I've been doing, and I've been working actually with parents on this, telling the parents, this is what I'm going to do with your kid. I have one student who's just working super fast because he's on this completion frenzy. He just wants to get all his lessons done. He doesn't care how good a job he does on them. So he's failing every single class, but he's almost done with all of them.
Oh, well.
Yeah. So I've met with the kids several times. I've said, listen, you're doing the work, sort of, but you're only doing it so you can say you did it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I did have to talk about a little bit of not, I really want to focus on rewards, but sometimes rewards aren't going to cut it. I almost had to kind of put the fear of God in him. I mean, like I said,
but some kids, they don't care about a sticker chart,
right?
Or that's not going to work for them. And so, yeah. And what was the kid's reaction?
When I told him that he was essentially killing his dog by not doing his math lessons, because I associated doing a good job on your math lessons is the same as feeding your dog the right amount of food every day. Because not doing the good job in your math lessons is you're feeding the dog a little bit, but not feeding him enough. So what's going to happen over the long run? Your dog's going to starve. So you're killing your math class, essentially. He said, I bet that I'm going to get an A or a B on the next math test. I'm like, okay, prove it to me. So I kind of had to give him some dares.
Yeah. Well, you found that intrinsic motivator for that kid, that little lever, emotional lever. He's kind of like, okay, you tell me I can't. Well, I'm
exactly.
going to show you. Yeah.
I talked with his parents. I'm like, listen, I haven't given up on him, but I'm going to play this disappointment angle, and I'm going to play it for all it's worth. Can you reset my lessons? Well, why should I?
Yeah.
You haven't shown me that you deserve it. Show me that you deserve it, and I'm happy to. But now you got to work for me.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of work for you. It's your turn to work for me. But a lot of motivation comes from, I'm going to say, the puzzles. I did an escape room with my kids yesterday.
Nice.
And it was basically a maze where they just had to add fractions together to follow a maze to get to the complete path, to get to the padlock. They could enter a code into and escape the room. And it wasn't about doing the math, it was about escaping the room. So figure out what the kid strives for in his own world. Yeah. If he's into Legos and he could spend hours and hours and hours on playing with Legos, put together a reward system where, if you do your lesson in 1 hour, then you can play with your Legos for an hour or some other,
Yeah.
some other reward system. I, I, I try and steer away from food and work more towards activities and mental
Yeah.
stuff.
Mhm.
But I mean, if your kid's motivated by food, use it.
Yeah. Yeah. I do. I think parents have a lot of tools at their disposal that they don't always tap into or think about. And it's just figuring out those levers of motivation for the kids. But there will be kids that, you know, it's not about Minecraft or Legos or a
Mm-hmm.
sticker chart. But and some in our family, we called those come to Jesus meetings that you were talking about. And
I call them that too.
yeah, and we didn't have to do it very often, but kids are kids. And the hard part about learning at home is, and this is the blessing of the parent-child relationship, is it's unconditional. So your children will save their very worst behavior for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can try to reason with them and and it won't work. But if a Mr. Squire says it, and this happened a lot in our house, I could tell him a million times, do it this way. This is why, please, one ear out the other.
Mm-hmm.
But if Mr. Squire said it, or Ms. A, or whoever it was, if they said it, it was gold.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, I'll go do it. So, again, figure out what motivates your kid, but also tap into your teachers.
Exactly.
Because and you said this earlier, kids want to please you and they want to do good, but they just kind of need that little push sometimes.
One thing that I'm trying to still figure out is the kid that works so hard at doing as little as possible. I'm still trying to work on that one. It's been 10 years. That one's a struggle, but
we've been talking, there's been parents in the group that have students that they're smart, they can do the work,
mm-hmm.
But it's taking them all day to complete assignments, and they're not completing every assignment that they need to get done, so they're falling behind. That's a struggle. That's a really big struggle, and I think that's when you have to kind of have those conversations, like to get down to the heart of the matter.
Mm-hmm.
Is it, are they depressed? Are they having anxiety? Like what's going on with them internally that this is, or
maybe it's not about school.
Yeah, maybe it's not about school, or maybe they just really, nobody has pushed them. You've
mm-hmm.
kind of just been like, okay, this is the way it is. And sometimes it takes kind of, this is what must be done. And, and I think, talk a little bit, because I think this is important, the role of parents in online education. What are the must-dos? What do parents have to do? What do you need them to do as an educator for their kids to be successful in the online setting? Because I think there's some misconceptions about the parent responsibility part.
I think there are some misconceptions. The parent responsibility for online learning is very different than it is from traditional learning. I remember when I was in school, in high school, my parents were very hands off. It's
that was the teacher's job, right?
Exactly. It was a teacher's job. But now we're learning so much more, that there's so much that goes into the raising of a kid. It's not just the school stuff and then the home stuff. The home stuff is the school stuff. The school stuff is the home stuff. They bleed into each other so much that it's almost impossible to separate them. So I would say stay in communication with the teachers, even if it's once a week or not even once every 2 weeks. And it's not just how's my kid doing. Do a little bit of digging on your own end and to find out yourself, this is how I think my kid is doing. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What are you seeing? Are you seeing something different? So ask the teachers questions. We want to help. Sometimes we have so many kids to focus on that we focus on the really, really low performing, and your kid may just not be performing at their best, but it's still what society would call acceptable. But you know that your student is not being pushed. So they're falling behind because they're bored. Then that happens a lot.
Yeah.
So get involved. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of time. It takes a phone call or an email, and just check in with them. And even if it's just to say, what can I do to help?
Yeah.
To help my kid.
If a parent could do one thing every day, and, you know, what would help you as an educator? If, you know, my kid's working on math, what's the one thing as a parent I can do that's going to be beneficial to the student and to you as an educator?
I would say there are probably two questions. What did you feel, ask the kid, what did you feel best about in your lessons today? And what did you feel worst about? And that's what you want to communicate to the teachers.
Yeah.
I think, because you want to celebrate the successes, no matter how small that success is. I want to celebrate it. I celebrate at the beginning of my lessons, everybody. We do a collaborative board where they just type in something that's good that's happened to them this week. And it's often, I got a puppy, or sometimes it's just like, I'm in good health today.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, that's awesome. I like celebrating those things. But we also need to talk about what's holding you back. You know, what did you not feel good about? And I usually will say, you don't have to say those in public. You can say them just to me, and I don't have to release them to the whole rest of the class. That's another one of the good things about online is we have that private connection, even in a public setting. So I would say find out what the top and the bottom for your kid each day.
Excellent. I think that's excellent advice. And, you know, as a parent, I want to support you in everything that you are doing to help my student. And so that's really important advice. And I think that kind of daily check-in, sometimes it's not enough to just look, okay, they completed the lessons. Because as you said, sometimes you got a kid that will plow through a lesson and maybe
it only shows you the good stuff.
Yeah. And so I think those two questions are really important. You know, what was good and what wasn't so good. And I think that'll help parents go a long way. Well, we're about at the end of our time, but thank you so much for just all the wonderful resources. And I'm going to share those.
I did think of one more resource.
Oh yeah, what else?
Paper and pencil.
Paper. That's right.
I mean, typing math is hard.
Yes, it is.
Typing math is hard.
Yes.
And I find, especially with my younger kids who want to do so much on their own, you know, 6th grade, 7th grade, 5th grade. And so I never want technology to get in the way of kids being able to demonstrate their understanding.
Yeah.
So I will tell them, if we can't use the program that's given to you, do it on paper and take a picture and send it to me.
Excellent advice. Yeah. Because I mean, I can remember where it took longer to type in and, you know, get all those, you know, the carrots right and all that for exponents and all of that. And there's nothing worse for a student to do all that and maybe have one little typo kind of thing and the whole problem gets marked wrong.
Exactly.
So I think that's wonderful advice. And
talk to the teacher about that.
Talk to the teacher about it, but that's really helpful. Also, we always took pictures before we hit send on assignments because it's the internet, technology, things happen. And if something went wrong and it didn't scan properly or the email was lost or whatever it was, we had a picture of what he had worked on and had all his work there so that we could just, you know, resend it to the teacher. Maybe maybe you couldn't do it through the Dropbox, but you were able to email it, or maybe, you know, Google Classroom didn't work or whatever. So take pictures of the work that your kids are doing just in case technology goes wrong. I think
Exactly, because it does.
it does. It happens. It happens to all of us, and it will save you some tears.
A lot of them.
I can guarantee you that. So, well, thank you, Barry Squire,
Thank
for
you.
being with us today and sharing all of your resources and just really good advice on how to set the tone for starting a math lesson and getting through it without tears and aggravation. I think we all could use that right now, and we appreciate everything that you're doing for kids right
Thank you
now.
very much. I had a great time.
Yeah, well, thank you, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
And I just wish you all the best, because I know what great work you're doing for kids out there.
Thanks, Tilly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, everybody, and we will see you next week on the Parent Exchange. Bye.